Hello and welcome back, everybody, to episode 151 of the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. I'm Dan John, and welcome to our weekly show answering your questions as they come in. Reminder, and people always ask me this question on the YouTube comments, how do I ask a question for the show? And I always answer, send them to podcast@DanJohnUniversity.com. I'll do my best to answer each and every one. I'm glad to be back home after a wonderful time at St. Mary's. And let's get off. We have some good questions here today, and let's go through them. Our first question is from Ralph. Now, Ralph gives us a lot of personal information about this kind of really bad injury he has, and he has to get a shoulder replacement. Let's go right to the question. My question is, do you know of persons who have had shoulder replacement, and what were their results? I also had a torn tendon in my right shoulder, but that's not much of a problem. Here's the deal, though. I am no athlete. I'm just 85 years old and want to stay active. I am efficiently sized, 5'4" and 110 pounds. I walk 1 to 2 hours each day, ride bike 2 to 3 times a week, and I use the gym for some weights 3 to 4 times a week. At the beginning of the year, he did easy strength, but he couldn't do the pressing. Well, let's get right to the question. First off, yes, I know many people who have had shoulder replacements. And boy, I tell you, it seems to me that there's a U curve in how they do after. Let me just say this first before we get too far, Ralph. For those of you who are listening to the podcast, first off, hats off to Ralph for, walking an hour or two every day, riding your bike 3 to 4 times a week and training in the weight room. That's impressive. Get some, what I'd like to do is think about it this way. For shoulder health, and this is just my experience, I have noticed that a long-term approach is better. So if you're young folks, get your hanging in, get your pressing in, take care of business, be wise, don't try not to be stupid. I know a person who blew their shoulder out putting luggage into the overhead bin. Okay, so when I'm at I hear basically, this is the only feedback I have, so I'm not a medical doctor, I'm just telling the feedback I have. Shoulder replacements can be really good or really bad, but I'll tell you, it comes down, it seems to me, from this one thing. If you end up having to get a shoulder replacement, first off, good luck to you, do what you're supposed to do. I don't know of any surgery where the rehab is more important. It almost seems to me, from the people I know, that those who took the rehab very seriously, a couple things I'd recommend. I wouldn't travel for about 6 months, and I would, maybe hire someone around the house to do certain activities. That doesn't mean you should, not do everything, but if you're going to go up on a ladder to fix something on the gutter, for a couple months, maybe hire that out. Traveling because of, luggage and just the odd positions you get in flights and trains and buses and all the rest, give yourself plenty of time to rehab that. If possible, take as much time off as you can. And then when it comes to doing those rehabilitation exercises, do them. Do everything they tell you to do. Take it very seriously. I can't recommend this enough. So Ralph, yes, I know I don't like to give medical advice, but all I can say is this. If you have to get a replacement in the shoulder area, please take the rehab as serious as you can. If you're already there, the injury is there that you need replacement, it's your task to take the years after the surgery as serious as you can. I can't beg you enough to do the rehab exercises as appropriate as often as you can. Although that's true for every surgery, with shoulder replacement surgery, it's imperative. We have a question from Brigu, and he asks this. You highly recommend that wrestling for football players, American football players. But I wanted to ask you, what is your opinion on judo for football players? Is it as effective as wrestling or not? Well, I think I've talked about this in the past. The only sport I was a natural at was judo. Every Monday, my mom would drop me off at the dojo, and the very first day I was on the mat, I might not have known everything, but I knew how to fight. On day one, the sensei put me up against a yellow belt, and I defeated the yellow belt. Of course, that's not exactly bragging, but when you're 10 years old, it was a nice thing. If you watch my high school football games, and I do have one of the videos in there, you can see that I use the ground as a wrestler and judo fighter very well. I roll, I get up, I let people get into my body, use leverage on them, and make the tackle. So yeah, I think judo was phenomenal. I often joke about the fact that the reason I didn't stay in judo, it came too easy for me. I'm the youngest of six, 5 brothers, and we fought constantly, we wrestled constantly, and so for me, going on the mat with rules was a much simpler thing. We have a question from Greg. It's always easy to get to the gym in the winter in Logan, Utah, but I hate not maximizing my outdoor time during our warm weather months. I have never done any sort of track and field, but I love the idea of taking a kettlebell and a 10-pound medicine ball to a high school track in the summertime for a nice outdoor workout. I would also suggest you go up to Utah State University and go to Coach Ralph Mon Stadium. He was my coach. Any suggestions on what kind of workouts I can incorporate for something like this? I would also love to try out some sprints, jumps, and throws that I could measure my progress with. Greg, go to danjohn.net, look up discus, and then I have a free book in there called A Contrarian Approach to the Discus Throw. It's 2002, so I'm using barbells there. But if you read some of my other stuff on danjohn.net, I do a lot of work with kettlebells on the field. I used to pull up my pickup truck, and we'd take the weights out of the back, and we'd do overhead squats, snatches, cleans, throws. Basically, I would think this way. And by the way, if you bring a partner with you, medicine ball throws are so much more fun when you play catch. One caveat: always let the ball hit the ground. Always let the ball hit the ground. Don't catch medicine balls in the air, unless they're the Dynamax 4-pounder, 2-kilo ones that we would use for certain games. But other than that, I always let the medicine ball hit the ground. Otherwise, it'll just save your thumbs and fingers. And if you disagree with me, come visit some of the people I know who didn't approve of that. And every so often you will catch a finger funny, and if you're catching it with a load, it hurts a lot. So what I would do is mix throws and then swings. Mix another variety of throws and then some clean and press. Then do some other thing like run hills. If you're at Ralph Mon Stadium, there's that massive hill right up there. We used to throw the hammer up on it. It was just wonderful. And just mix the throws and sprints and hill sprints and with the lifts. And I think you're going to find it a marvelous workout. One thing is you'll find that the workouts don't take nearly as long because you get such a huge body hit. We have 2 questions from Paul. What typical training modifications do you recommend for taller, lankier athletes who still want to get really strong? Are deadlifts worth it? And it's interesting, Paul, because the first thing I usually recommend for taller athletes is to use the movement of squat, to help keep things balanced. But you'll get strong in the hinge movements. The biggest thing I recommend for taller people, of course, is to do them off boxes or racks so that you don't have that weird final really deep drop as you grab the bar. But for me, with taller athletes, it would be deadlifts off the racks, deadlift off boxes as the number one strength tool. So really, I wouldn't necessarily avoid anything. I mean, I would raise the bar off the floor quite a bit, in fact. And if you're really long in the shanks, it's going to be quite a height addition with the rack or box. Um, how would you tweak the standards you shared for taller athletes? A bodyweight press for me feels unachievable, but I have reached a double bodyweight deadlift in a few points in my life. Any thoughts on sensible standards for tall guys? Well, I mean, this isn't. I mean, you've already basically told everybody. You know, you let the cat out of the bag. Yeah, I still think in double body weight deadlift, especially if you do it off a rack, a high trap bar, or boxes. As for pressing, you get what you get, and my nephew is 6'10", and just watching him reach up to fix something, I'm like, yeah, you're not built for pressing. The physics just aren't there. So, you got so many benefits from being a taller athlete that you're not going to have to worry about the weight room as much. But for longevity and health purposes, because being taller does impact longevity. At least that's what I was told by the NBA. Be sure to think more about keeping everything balanced, and check in with your spine, your shoulders, your hips, and knees a lot to make sure you when you leave the gym, you feel good. I think if you're a taller athlete, bodybuilding, the tradition of bodybuilding, those 15 to 25 reps, that pumping, probably has some value. We got a question from Teddy. Teddy says, I'm a physio, work with a highly motivated military population, and I've been fortunate enough to work along with some incredible coaches and physios along the way. Through the years, I've found the use of specialty bars to be helpful in balancing out the overuse patterns, surgical histories, and high risks on the job. Parachuting is very dangerous. Swiss bar benching, landmine pressing, and pit shark, that's the belt-loaded squats, are all on a regular basis. In addition, we incorporate a great deal of crawling, various goblet hold patterns, split kneeling positions, and specific mobilization exercises. In regards to your time working with the first responder military population, have you removed or altered any specific or traditional lifts from their program due to the increased risk of injury? Yeah, it's a good question, and I'm going to summarize it. Teddy, just go to my program called the Post-Deployment Program. It's in the book Attempts, and it's also at danjohnuniversity.com. But yeah, we got rid of almost all deadlifts from the floor and moved to rack deadlifts or real high trap bar deadlifts. I stopped worrying about big loads in the back squat or high reps in the back squat. Almost all of our pressing for that population is the half kneeling, and we do a lot of hangs because of what it does for the shoulder health. So yeah, I've made a lot of changes. But Teddy, let's do this. Have you, if you're not a member, danjohnuniversity.com, sign up, look at the post-deployment program and the articles I wrote about it, and get a sense for the way I do things. Now, it is different. It doesn't look, it doesn't look as groovy as, training to be a Spartan or whatever the fill in the blank cool warrior is. But long term, it's better for the people. Noah asks a simple question. I wanted to ask what your general thoughts were about high intensity training for building muscle and why it's hardly ever done well, it seems like. Also, do you think HIIT programs after a high volume program like your Mass Made Simple would be a good idea for some abbreviated training? And no, you hit it on that second question. Yeah, so everybody falls in love with high intensity training. You do. That's part of everyone's career. I remember when Arnold was so popular and everyone was doing his 6-day a week, double split. And then all of a sudden the overuse and the exhaustion came in, and people fell in love with those one set to failure programs on a machine. Well, think about it. You went from high volume to low volume. You went from like a medium, longish intensity to a really high intensity. All you did was add variables. So yeah, I think there's, if you go for Mass Made Simple for 6 weeks, and then I don't even know how much time you'd need to recover from that, but let's just say a couple of workouts off and then went over to a machine-filled facility and you did a bunch of burnout sets, those high, you keep changing the loads and keep getting the reps in. It would be a total change in how you feel about things. I mean, go from the burn on a leg extension is radically different than a set of 50 with 225 in the back squat. I would say a set of 50 in the back squat isn't fun with your body weight, isn't fun no matter how you shape it. But, it is kind of fun to get the burn on and leg extensions, leg curl rows, machine rows and that kind of thing. I think that's why it works. I think when people went from high volume to high intensity, it works. And what you'll notice is it works for about 6 weeks and it doesn't work anymore after that. Now, obviously, you can change that by using certain drugs. But if you're natural, it makes sense to go from a highish volume kind of thing to a high intensity kind of thing, and then after doing a few rounds of that, take some time off, go to the beach, walk on the beach and pick up, seashells, and then recover and start again. Good question, Noah. We have a question from Brandon, and it's interesting. This is our second question from the Intermountain West. I live in the Rockies of Colorado and try to train outside when possible. With the amount of snow we get, only gives me 3 to 5 months out of the year to do so. I have a selection of double kettlebells from 8 to 24 and can train outdoors with no problem. I, however, have recently acquired a barbell as I want to incorporate some of those movements into my training and eventually get to a 405-pound deadlift. Due to space restraints and renting, I am unlikely to be doing heavy lifting or dynamic Olympic lifts in my 300 square foot cabin. Yeah, hence the outside training. I have a space to keep the barbells indoor to keep them as clean and well cared for as I can, but I plan on keeping the plates outside. They will be covered while outside and not in use. Any suggestion for types of plates, cast iron, urethane, etc., or tips for storing them and keeping them in the best shape possible for outside storage and use? So it's actually a relatively easy question. The fact that they're covered is step one, but you're going to miss the most important thing. If you're storing your weight plates outside, make sure, in fact, you could probably just have 2 pieces of wood, but make sure the plates are not touching the ground. And if you get this much rain, you're probably okay. But if you have like just blocks of wood or some lumber and you place them on top, and it's not that it's so that they don't sit in moisture. If you cover them, that's great, but you're going to notice, and by the way, you probably can get away, at least I have here in Utah where it's dry. I've always kept my weights elevated. Now, if you have the nice racks, you still want to cover it because you don't want it to rain in the morning with the dew or whatever you have. But if you do, if you cover them and you let some air go underneath them, they will stay relatively dry and rust free for a long time, even if they're just good old-fashioned iron like I have. Okay, we have a question from Steve, and Steve asks us, you talk about what easy strength is all the time. I understand the program, but why would I do it? Well, in my case, Steve, in 22 days after doing the program, just a month, I broke my lifetime best in strength exercises like the incline bench press, later the thick bar deadlift. Later I got my pull-ups to go through the roof. My snatch grip deadlift went through the roof. I quit incline benching probably in 1974, 75 when I was like a teenager, and I inclined 300. So obviously I was older when I did the 22nd day of easy strength, no spotter, my brand new car at my feet, because that was where the incline was in my garage at the time. It was cold, and I pulled 315 off the racks. I did 1 to kind of laughed because it was so easy, thought about the car and racked it, okay? The reason I'm so happy with easy strength because it does that one quality that is the master of all qualities. You get stronger. Now, why is that important? Well, if you're a discus thrower, like or a thrower, an athlete of any kind, what I call quadrant 3. So where really you just have two qualities in quadrant 3, your technical side and your strength side. Obviously there's more, but that's pretty simple. If I can get stronger by lifting, an hour to an hour and 15 minutes a week, well, that saves all my energy, that weird nervous system energy that if you've ever done track and field or an Olympic lifting meet, you would know what I'm talking about. So when I show up to go throw, I'm fresh and alive and ready to go farther. Okay, I thought that was the reason that was the best. Then I started reading the work of Rusty Moore, who was this brilliant fat loss expert. He's famous for that yacht bod look. And it was interesting because I've purchased all of his materials. I think he and Clarence Bass are really interesting, intelligent people when it comes to fat loss. And it's certainly an area, it was never any focus of mine. I mean, when you're working with throwers in American football, fat loss is something you always talk about when the career is over and you never seem to get around to it. But I started reading the work of Rusty Moore, and I noticed something about his best fat loss programs is he was using a book, and the book was Easy Strength. Of course, that's the book that me and Pavel wrote. So I'm starting to look at his work, and I realized that the high tension you do in easy strength, and you combine it with walking and maybe some intelligent nutritional interventions. For me, my favorite ones is just kind of moving yourself away from concentrated calories. You probably know what I'm already talking about. Stop drinking calories, which is a really good idea. Some people say don't eat things like sandwiches and burritos, those really highly concentrated foods. Now, listen, I have a weakness. I love bean and cheese burritos. It is a weakness of mine. But if I want to dance at my granddaughter's wedding, I got to be a little smarter about how I shovel those down my throat. So if you're interested in getting stronger for sports, easy strength is one of my best weapons, one of my best tools. I would put you as much as 8 months of the year on easy strength programming. Maybe a little less depending on, if you really do need an off season or not. And maybe a little bit more if strength is what you need. And in the area of fat loss, easy strength with walking with an intelligent nutritional intervention. I mean, by the way, as you know, what the research says, everything works in nutritional interventions. Low carb, high carb, low fat, high fat, more protein, less protein, going totally vegetarian, going totally meat. Everything seems to work. It's the adherence that seems to be the key. I'm a big fan personally as at my age and where I'm at for things like intermittent fasting and, eating more fermented food, more fiber. So if I combine easy strength with walking with a smarter dietary approach, you can kind of do what I did. And, I'm trying to lose about a pound or less a month. And I've been doing that now for a year and a half. I started this weighing 260 and I weighed 218 the other day. Now, I know someone said I look swollen and ill on one of on one of these YouTube posts. Yeah, okay. I am swollen ill. This sports has broken my face and I am 65. So yeah, why would you do easy strength? You do easy strength because it's a great way to get strong and it supports all your other goals. I hope that helps. Well, there you go, folks. Episode 151 of the DanJohnUniversity.com podcast. It was a short one today, but as always, I thank you for paying attention and listening. If you have questions, podcast at DanJohnUniversity.com. I'm always here to answer your questions. And until next time, keep on lifting and learning. Thank you.